Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Between the Sharks. Today is Fender Day. So we've got to do some cutting and a welding on these 30 Ford Fenders, coupe fenders, to make them fit this 27 Ford body. So custom fenders, compound curves, all of that to get them looking just right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, I'm Ryan. That's a 27 Ford touring body wearing 1930 coupe fenders at the moment. So we got to make everything fit. Like many things in life, hot rods are all about proportion, and we all see things a little bit differently. But for me, I'm focused on this back area. You can see we're a couple inches off of factory. Factory is sort of subjective because this is a 27 body with 30 fenders. These are also coupe fenders, which would fit totally different if the rears were, in fact, touring car fenders. They would tuck in properly. But what I'm seeing, I've been staring at this for a few weeks, kind of like not exclusively staring at it for a few weeks. I've been doing other things, but I've had these fenders mounted and somewhat held in place the way that I kind of thought I wanted them. It's a little bit hard to tell because of the camera lens, but I'm deciding at this point that I think I want to bring these fenders in 1 inch to 1.25 inches. Let me explain to you why. So currently the face of the white wall sits about 1.25 inches back from the edge of the fender. I've already modified the edge of the fender in a different video to make it fit this body, but I took out kind of the minimum to make it go because it's a lot easier to take more out than put it back on. So at this point, I've decided I want to go about 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches in toward the body, so the white wall and the edge of the fender are close. Now, get in here and take a look. The shape and the profile of these tires, it tapers in and away from, like this is the widest point, right? Most ballooned out, everything else goes back. So even getting the white wall sort of toward the edge of the fender, the tire is still gonna tuck neatly under there. But as we were saying about proportion, these are 820-15s, about the most expensive bias ply white wall you can get. And they're big and they're supposed to look kind of large, but if you tuck it in a huge fender, then they start to like lose that bigness. They suddenly become buried by this. Now the other thing while we're at it is that's gonna tighten up this gap a little bit. You can see this is where the Model A coupe body sat. So this will shove this in another inch or so, close up this gap, and then back here, it'll tighten this gap up just a little bit as well. Now, if we have to add to the fenders, well, that's hot rodding. That's no big deal. Filling a little bit of a gap or whatever, I knew that was always going to be part of the plan, but it's got to look right. This all looks pretty decent to me. The part that's bothering me the most is when you get sort of over here, you know, suddenly you lose that tire in the fender completely. And that's kind of what I'm trying to eliminate. I don't like the look of the tire sticking completely out. That's not what I'm after, even though that was pretty common on a stock Model T touring body with fenders. If you put big fat tires on them, they stuck out kind of. Super common late 50s, early 60s kind of look. I want it to look a little bit more natural than that, so nothing to it but to do it. Let's get rid of 1 inch of fender and see what happens. All right, so trimming compound curves to fit compound curves is a tricky process. So I'm gonna bring you along the best I possibly can. Now, I'm gonna do as much of this on the body as possible because that's kind of the reality we're dealing with. But what I mean about compound curves and compound curves is the fender's cut kind of this way, the body's cut sort of the opposite. One's concave, one is convex. And we're not touching the whole way. So we need to remove material all the way down to, you know, somewhere around here. We gotta measure what all of that is. Now, in addition, I have this out to show you. The fender is tucked in under the body right now. Something, the tune of 3/8 to 1/2 inch, depending on how you look at it. And what that means is if I want to take out 1.25 inches and I measure it to here, well, I'm taking out 1.25 inches plus that 1/2 inch if I measure it directly off the body right here. And that's 1.75 inches, which is more than I want to remove, as you can imagine. So you just got to take all of that into account. So I'm going to make a little majigger to draw a 3/4 inch line plus my 1/2 inch that's tucked in under the fender. We'll remove all of that and you'll see 1.25 inches. but you gotta get it in the right place, you know? So there's a lot of ways to do everything. I just took a piece of scrap wood, came in 3/4 of an inch, and fit my Sharpie through it, just like that. You can use masking tape that's the right width, you can measure, you can do all sorts of stuff. For me, this is a pretty good guide. Let me show you how it works. So I can rest this against the body, put the old Sharpie in it. So the reason I like this method is if you do tape, you don't really know when to start and stop. So up here, it's obvious, right? You could come straight out to your mark, but as we cruise down and we taper off to where the fender is no longer touching, right in this area, well, my scribe still carried that line, so I know I need to cut the fender all the way down to about there. At this point, this will be flush with the body. At the same time, that is flush with the body. I gotta do a little bit of improvisation around the back because coming off the body here, I kind of run out of stuff to, you know, taper my taper off of. So it's gonna actually tuck under. So we're gonna have to kind of figure that out. I think I'm just gonna swing it in straight like that and hope for the best. All right, now the fender's marked for the cut, everything is about to move. When we move this in, everything's gonna kind of shift around a little bit. So just for funsies, I'm gonna go ahead and make some reference marks. I'm gonna unbolt the fender because cutting it on here, it's asking for trouble. And there's a very expensive tire below there. So we're gonna pull it off, pull out the old jigsaw. Got the fender off, so we can look at a couple things a little more closely. First of all, you can sort of see that edge, that body line that the fender tucks under. And then on top of that, you can see that this tape was actually tucked under this fender. The tape was tucked under that fender lip the whole time. So here's our mark. And I think the interesting thing to pay attention to here is like, we're gonna move almost 1.5 inches of material here and then way less everywhere else, sort of in a taper. And that's essentially the compound curve effect. When you're trying to fit, you know, we've got a curve going this way and this way, trying to match a body curve that's doing this and this. So hopefully my method is going to get us pretty close. That's the same method I used to get this line. But as you can see, if I went with just this line and came back 3/4 of an inch or any number really, it's not quite right. So I had the fender fitted and looking the way I wanted it to, attached to the running board at the front, held in place by a jack stand in the back, and I had a measurement off the face of the tire all the way across. So I've got the fender. Because I used a black Sharpie on the black fender, I'm gonna go ahead and tape my line so that you and I can all see it. But in doing that, we'll kind of smooth out anywhere that I may have, you know, gotten a little wiggly. Maybe that's mo better. Sometimes you get a little too focused and hit the wiggles, you know? All right, that'll do it. All right, we're all marked up and ready to go. You can use whatever you want to cut a curve like that. It's not a straight line, it's a weird curve. So for me, we'll be using a little bit of cutting wheel, but the unsung hero in this garage is the jigsaw with a thin metal cutting blade on it. It basically functions like a body saw, but I don't have to deal with getting the compressor running and it's not as loud. And you know, basically if I run out of air, the saw doesn't stop. Nope, just plug that feller in. You know, these days they even have battery operated ones. Guys should probably invest in one of those, but I haven't yet. Anyway, let's get to hacking this thing up. Make no mistake, it's a weird looking cut. A little daunting when you look at it like this, but you know, these are kind of egg-shaped vehicles. There's lots of curvature. Even if it's subtle, there's a lot, anyway, that's why I like them. Anyway, let's go put it on. There's no way to tell unless to go back and bolt it all up. See how we did. A little nervous, not much. Look. Leaf blowers are going, must be an episode of Between the Sharks. Anyway, we got the fender kind of mocked up. I was smart enough to lift the car up in the air. I don't know, I think you can see it, but now the white wall is basically in line with the fender in the front with this pretty tight. This gap has closed up a little bit. I will say we've taken a lot of structure out of the fender, and in wiggling it in here, a couple things have become evident. That if I don't line this up factory, it fits the Model T profile way better, which in my opinion is a better look than the Model A. And if you don't know the difference, you can just see right here. This fender for a Model A would kind of come straight up and then hook back. Right now, we're just getting this nice flow that goes into the fender and the body and all that jazz, and I like it. So we're gonna go and work with that. Now at this point, I can't get the back tight yet because if you can see under here, this little tab is hitting. You guys see that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Tiniest little piece, I left it on there because it had a mount. We're gonna have to build a thing for our own mounts anyway, but running boards and stuff are lined up. Here's the thing so you can actually see what's going on here. If we take a straight edge, right? That's how close we are to the white wall. Even approaching it, you can kind of see the difference here. That is the gap that we removed when we trimmed it. So, you know, it looks fine, but like you come around and wait, it just goes away. And that's the problem I'm trying to solve. I don't want it really sticking out, but I don't want it to be that hidden, you know? Cruising around here, that's way more better. I'm happy with this decision. I was pining over it for a long time. In fact, I wasn't confident enough to go for it until today. And that's a couple weeks of looking at stuff. And it's interesting too, now that that structure is kind of out of the fender on the backside, we can mold it to fit the body, and then we're gonna have to put structure back in on the inside to mount it to the body, and that will kind of hold it to the Model T shape, which is gonna look more and more natural. So brief step away. If you're new to the channel, I love customs and I love hot rods, but the thing I'm always after is a proportion that, in my opinion, looks like it was factory. Like if you see the car, it should look really good, but if you don't know what you're looking at, you might not know why. Or like why it maybe is looking a little different than something you'd seen in the past, or maybe is a better looking one than something you've seen in the past. So I'm not crazy about the super bananas customs. Like, well, let me rephrase that. I don't really have any interest in building super radical customs. I love the ones that look right, whatever that means, without being like obvious that it's been changed. So my goal for this thing is I like the 27 bodies better than I like Model A bodies. But I like Model A fenders better than I like 27 fenders because of the flow and the curves, and I think they're just a lot sexier. So my goal is to get this body flowing with these fenders, and if you didn't really know what you were looking at, you might be like, hey, that's a really cool old one of those, and it should look right to your eye, you know? So that said, I'm trying to get these wheels fitting in this fender in a way that looks hot roddy, but isn't like screaming. Just a little off the top. Glad did not just hit this gas tank. Now, it's scratch and dent, so it's already between the shark stuff, but, you know, look at that. Get in here. Look at that. Do a little final fitment, but I'm pretty pleased. Gem old straight edge on there. I think we're in the ballpark, gang. It's pretty good looking, if I do say so myself. All right, gang, I spent a minute or two kind of basking in it, walking from side to side, and it looks like it's supposed to. Subtle difference, but big difference. I mean, I think with a custom car and a hot rod or whatever, the battle is lost and won in subtleties. Either something looks just right or something looks just wrong, you know? So this is a huge win, and I'm kind of elated because when you start cutting up 100-year-old sheet metal, you kind of wonder if you might be doing something wrong here, because it's just, you know, not comparing myself to anybody and what they were doing in the 50s, but in the 50s, if you blew a fender and really screwed it all up, you might be able to get another one. I bought these years ago, and I haven't seen another set come up for sale at a reasonable price in many moons, because I would have bought them, because I like fenders sometimes, and I know how rare they can be, so I would have stashed them. And like I said, these were coupe fenders, and I'm modifying them because I never saw a set of sedan fenders or touring fenders come up. So here we are. I mean, these are the two pieces that we took out of that side to sort of make it fit this body, which it's not much, but it's not a little either. So on that note, I want to put you guys in fast forward mode, blast some rock and roll music, and we're gonna do the same thing to this side. Same method, same tools, same cut, hopefully, and same adjustments. We'll see you in a minute. Guys, this may be a short video, and this is really all we removed this whole time, but man, the process to get here was long. Obviously, this is a hobby project for me. I use my spare time when I got my spare time to make it happen, but really, it's taken a lot of just studying on these lines to decide to actually go ahead and start chopping stuff up. I definitely think it was the right decision. This is a much better line, and yeah, I'm pretty jazzed on it. So good luck on your projects out there. We'll see you next time on Between the Sharks when we dive in a little further. I think I gotta tack these fenders to the body, and then we gotta start building mounts to keep them where they are, which is actually a pretty exciting step. All right, gang, this falls into the little bit goes a long way category. Super happy with it. We're gonna get in here, embrace all of this stuff sooner than later, and keep this project moving along. That's gonna do it for this one, guys, but thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and when you comment, I read them all. I really do appreciate it. Keeps me going and making these videos and working on this project, so thank you very, very much. And we'll see you next time on Between the Sharks when we do more hot rod something, and good luck on your projects out there. Until next time, adios.